Hello, this is Gabriel, and today I would like to show you how you can run your JMeter tests with Maven and Maven Wrapper. Maven is a build and dependency management tool for Java, but it can also be used to execute your JMeter test, and because it has a great support from different CI/CD tools and cloud providers, you can actually take advantage of it and run your performance tests in all those tools if you use it. We also look at Maven Wrapper, so I think or a tool that can replace Maven installation and allows to ship your code without additional dependency on runtime. So basically, you won't need to make sure that the particular version of Maven exists in your runtime, so CI/CD tools. It makes it really easy to run JMeter tests in CI/CD tools in cloud providers, but also it gives you the possibility to check different versions of JMeter, how it will run your tests. So that's great for that reason too. And both tools coming together. So Maven Wrapper and also the JMeter Maven plugin that we are going to apply actually allow you to ship your code. So JMeter tests without these runtime dependencies, because they can be fetched on demand when somebody executes your build. So basically, think of it as a preparatory step for running JMeter tests on the cloud. It's not the only way, but for the beginners, it's probably the easiest one. Okay, we should start with downloading the Maven, which you can do from that location. Just download that file, go to your folder, and then you can go and let me move there, unzip it. That's my unzipped installation. As soon as you did that, edit your environment variables, set Maven home to that location. As you can see, they actually match in my place, and also add this bin folder to the path variable, which you can do by setting this entry in environment variables. After you're done, you can open your PowerShell or any other shell that you use and check whether Maven version reports the desired version of Maven, which in our case is 3.6.3, which is also the latest one. Okay, so you have Maven installed. Now we should move on and create a simple Maven project. I will move on to the folder where I host such stuff. We create a new folder called Wrapper, and I will use git bash here because I prefer that over PowerShell. If you want to create a new Maven project, then there is an archetype command that you can use, and it will create an empty project for you. You will find that command in my Medium.com article, or you can just type it like here. It takes a number of parameters. It takes the template name, the basic template, which is quick start, works fine for us. It also takes other parameters such as group and artifact ID. These are together commonly known as group and artifact virtual coordinates, and they uniquely identify your project within Maven space of projects. So it's important if you plan to distribute your artifacts. If you don't, then it probably doesn't matter what you put here, but I prefer nice names. Hopefully I didn't make any typo in here. I think not. Well, maybe I'll just make it again. Okay, I think it's better now. I hit enter, and Maven should download and create a sample project for me in here. Okay, that's great. We are also going to use IntelliJ as my ID of choice. And let's open this project. You can open Maven projects simply by opening the POM.xml file. You can treat POM.xml file as project descriptor. So basically this file describes your project and everything that it requires. So in particular, dependencies and plugins that you are using, and we are going to use one important plugin. So it's an XML file that's quite easy to edit. All right, we have our Maven project. So we should create some simple JMeter scenario to work with. I have the latest JMeter installed. I will create a simple plan with one thread group and one HTTP sampler. Let's just shoot to ping.com and let's make some of these properties parameterized. So let's set loop count to loops property set or 1. Let's add some listeners so we know that it works fine. Now we need to save it. So I will save it to our folder. Let's go to this wrapper project. And now the plugin we are going to use expects that this JMix file is located in source test JMeter folder. So we'll put it here because that's the convention. You can obviously change it, but that's the convention. Now it's saved. Let's just make sure we didn't make any typo. Okay, for one request we have 3 because we have redirect here. Okay, that's simple, but that's enough for us. We won't go back to it. As you can see in our project, we now have test JMX scenario in JMeter folder, source test JMeter test JMX. All right, now it looks that it's okay, so we can now proceed with configuring our plugin. So here in POM.xml file, we need to add a new plugin, and you do it by adding this plugin within the build plugins section like that. The plugin is has these coordinates. I invite you to study the documentation for that plugin in your free time, but basically for now it's all that we need. So let's open the terminal in the same location where your POM.xml file is. So by default, Maven commands or Maven phases need to be executed from the place where, from the same location where POM.xml is. You can change that, but let's start with that. When you run that, then basically plugin gets activated because Maven verifying does it. This plugin will download the latest version of JMeter and will run your test. As you can see, we have just run it. So let's study it. When you run Maven command, then a target folder, which is a temp folder, gets created. It contains all the results of your build, such as artifacts built, reports generated, and all temp files. If you go to JMeter, then you see that it contains things like the log file, and you can see the default log level is info, result file, which contains our sampler results, so our shoot to ping.com, and test files. So here we have just JMix file, and all different stuff is something you can have a look yourself in your free time. But basically, each time you run it, this folder gets generated. You can wipe it out with Maven clean, and you can see it disappeared. All right, so Maven clean verified is the simplest way to run your performance tests. Now we should look at some more advanced use cases of that. All right, so we'll start to basically configure our plugin. We should add the basic configuration block, and we'll force the loops property to be provided to JMeter. So you remember we created the loops variable in JMeter to accept either the property or B1 if not provided. Now we can define this value in here in this configuration block. So let's set it to 2 and let's see if this generates, I expect 6 requests. As you can see, it works. We can navigate to here to JMeter results, and as you can see, we actually repeated the scenario twice, so there were 2 loops. Now, what would be the most common command configuration? So except for that, if you want to run this build command or run your test from a different folder, for instance, let's say you move on, well, maybe target's not the good one, but you're in a different location, you write that, it won't work because you need to be in the POM XML folder. But you can use that switch, and if you use the -f switch, then your test will get executed too. So that's great. Now, thanks to Maven plugin, you can really also use the JMeter that gets downloaded and use it as GUI tool. So if you run that command, well, I need to move to that folder where POM XML is. Please remember about that. If you run that command, it will start graphical user interface for your JMeter. As you can see, we have here 5, 2, 1. That's great. That's a very useful feature if you, for instance, ship your code and it's kind of JMeter version dependent and your colleague needs to do a review, he can just, use the version that's native to your JMeter test. You can also change the version of JMeter that gets downloaded. If you go to here, well, let's just refresh that. If you go to here, then you see that the version that uses the latest one is 5.2.1. But what if we wanted to use a different version? Then you can provide that version on runtime, on the command line, sorry, like this. For instance, let's use 5.2.0. And as you can see, well, it didn't work. And that's actually my observation that although the plugins producer say that you can change the version here, it often fails because of missing artifacts in repo Maven repository. But there is a way around this. If you want to change the version, then you can do something else. Basically, if you go to changelog for JMeter, then you will notice that for each version of the plugin, well, to the changelog for the releases of this plugin, that each version of this plugin is bundled with particular version of Apache. So if I wanted to use 5.1 and this recommended way of choosing the version here does not work, I can simply change the version of the plugin used. So I will change it to 8.6. I will run it. And in this case, the version of JMeter used should be 5.1. As you can see, 5.1 has been downloaded. Obviously, it has some downside. So if you are using older version of JMeter, then obviously there can be some features you are missing, or there can be some bug fixes you are missing. So if this proper one works, use it. If it doesn't, then play with the version of the plugin itself to find or to use the correct version of JMeter you want. All right, so that's how you can change the version. Very often when we run tests, then we really want to manage the parameters of the test within the properties file rather than providing it in the command line or within this kind of configuration blocks like here. So if you want to do that, then let's first remove that block because it will overwrite anything else. And let's create user properties file. I'll let it be empty and let's just run our tests to make sure to observe how many requests we have by default. It's free, but I want to show you. That takes really a moment. You can see that for each loop we have 3 successful requests. So now if I put loops equal to 3, I expect 9 to happen. And this is the convention. So basically the plugin expects both scenario and user properties files to be here. If you put it and you specify variables there, oh, it worked, it's 9, then they will be consumed and available in your JMeter scenario. Okay, so it's quite clean, nice, and easy. Now let's move back actually to here. In here the situation is that whatever is in here will override the user properties. So properties is kind of like first place where JMeter will take the variables from, and then if you specified it in here, then they will be taken. So in that scenario, I run 6 requests, but what if I wanted to provide this number from the command line? Then you do it with -d switch, then the name of variable, and you provide the value. So for instance 2, but that's not the only change you need. You also need to change that to the default. Well, you also need to use it. So basically that creates a Maven variable called loops that you will pass as a property, and they have actually the same name. So it will work like this. If I want to run it like this, then I expect as a result to have 6 requests in total in the summary. Okay, and it works. So now we know how to pass it in user properties and how to override that with command line. All right. There are some important things that we need to change when we run our test. We need to make sure, for instance, that the memory settings are correct because, well, we don't know where that process gets executed. So you can specify JMeter process settings in here. This block is, for instance, responsible for setting these 2. When you run this now, then you should observe here, you can see it in here, that XMS and XMX have been set to the correct values, exactly what we wanted really. And as you can see, if we don't provide any value from the command line, then the one from user properties has been taken. So this all looks good. What other possibilities do we have in here? Well, in terms of setting that values, we also can influence that. So you can set it from outside of the POM XML. So we can set something like that. But when you do, then except for that, so we are using Maven variables in here. I also recommend, if it's not necessary, perhaps it is, to define the default values. And you do it in the properties block in Maven. And if nothing's provided, this will be taken. So let's just use some reasonable defaults. Let's do like that. So we are setting these default values, and I'm changing let's say XMS to 6, 7, 8. So I would expect that now my test will be run with XMX equal to 768 and XMX to, well, I expected 1024, got something else, probably I made a typo here. Yeah, so that should be like here. Okay, easy to spot and easy to overlook. Okay, now it works fine, so now we changed our value and one was taken from the defaults. That's good. What else do you need really at the beginning? Well, you can also change things like log level, and again you can set some default log level to, let's say, well, let's do it like here, log level. Let's set it to debug, the default one. Well, obviously it's just experimenting, and you can change the behavior by providing that configuration block. Now when you run it, the JMeter log should contain entries for the debug level, and you will find the log from JMeter run in here. That's not visible by default. Okay, well, let's show it in Explorer, and let's open it in, let's say, Notepad++ or anything else. Okay, and as you can see, we have all the debug information. So obviously I don't recommend that, but I'm just showing how you can enforce different configuration options of that plugin. Now, something that's very useful from my point of view is that we can manage different configuration per different environments when we test, right? So here we have just one user properties file, but normally we probably have 2, 3, 4 different environments, and you want to run basically the same test, but with different parameters, such as change of URL, change of load parameters. So I would like to run my test like that I specify the environment to be one of the ones that I want to have, and then I want that the user properties that's picked is related to that environment. So I want environment specific user properties file. Okay, how to do it? Let's first set the default environment to be, for instance, oh, that's a typo, to be, for instance, test. And now this user properties file is being accepted because that's the default location where plugin looks for it. We can change that default location and make it dependent based on the Maven env variable that we will provide. So you can use that piece of configuration to enforce the user properties file taken to be in that path. As you can see, that's actually the variable. So we can have different location for test, different for dev. Okay, we did that, but we still need to create a path because it doesn't exist. That should be props, and then the name should be like the environment. So I will create one for test, and I will also create one for dev. And then I will take that file, I will copy it to test with some values, and I will copy it to dev. Okay, so dev one will contain 2, and the default one will contain 3. So let's run it with test. I expect 9 requests in total, so 3 times 3. It's okay. Now I'm running that for dev environment, and I expect 6. Yeah, and that's great. And I run it with no environment, so the default will be taken, and the default is test, so I expect 9 again. And that's great. So as you can see, this is really a nice way to manage your configurations of your test runs, and that's very useful because when your build is finished, then you can see that in your test files you have your scenario, but you also have those configuration files. But when it's done, then you can store not only the results of your tests somewhere, let's say in Artifactory, Nexus, Azure Artifacts, so not only this file or a pretty HTML report like that, but you can also store the runtime configuration. And then when you look at it, like 3 months later, then you know, okay, I ran it at that time against that environment with these parameters. So you can track it backwards, and that's useful for finding problems or making sure that the trend line that you're getting is consistent and you, for instance, didn't change that runtime at some point in time. Okay, so that's very useful. If you want to look at the complete POM file, then obviously it's available in my GitHub repository. That's the one here. Just go to my profile, which is Gabriel Star on GitHub, and there's Maven Wrapper project, and you can look at that. You can fork it, and you have everything that we are showing here. One more thing that I wanted to show you is the Maven Wrapper tool. Maven Wrapper basically allows you not to have Maven installed on your environment. So basically, at the beginning, we had to download Maven, configure it, and use it. But when you run something in Jenkins, Azure, or any other CI tool, then maybe you have it, maybe you don't. If you don't, you need to make sure it's there in the correct version, so Maven in the correct version. So Maven Wrapper allows you not to think about it, because if Maven's not there, then it will get downloaded for your run, just for your run. So your build is becoming much more clean. So you get a cleaner build as a result. Now, how to use Maven Wrapper plugin? Well, in order to initiate the plugin, you need to have Maven. So at least once the author should make that config change from somewhere where Maven already is, because you initiate with Maven. That's the funny thing about it, and that's the command you would take. If you want to change the Maven version, then that's the parameter, but sometimes it won't work. So let's just stay with the default. And as you can see, well, it says we were using Apache Maven 3.6.3, but you will see that there are some changes within our repository. So we got the Maven hidden folder here that contains some stuff, and we also get 2 additional scripts. Basically, that's the shell script, so that's what you would execute on Linux, and that's the Windows version. Now, if we executed something like this on Windows, we are doing it like this. And I expect the success. Yes, it's a success. What happened? We didn't use the Maven that we had pre-installed on our machine. Instead, that piece of script downloaded the Maven for us and basically executed the command with that particular Maven that's downloaded from the location that's described in here. So if you wanted to change that, for instance, to 3.6.2, you can also do direct change. Obviously, you need to make sure that this URL really exists. Now, if I do it like this, then I should actually use a different version of Maven. and you can check it by also verifying directly the version. As you can see, it's 3.6.2 platform disk, and we can also reload it to see if anything else is here, but it's not. Now in here there should be the Maven file somewhere. We don't see it, but you should find this executable here, or you can find it within wherever your local Maven repository is. But for us, it does not really matter where this Maven has been downloaded. What matters is that we no longer need to have Maven installed. So if you now, for instance, push this repository and your colleague downloads it and creates a review or wants to make a review, then first of all, he doesn't need to have JMeter installed in the version that was used, because he can execute this JMeter GUI command that will open the version that basically you want this project to be executed with. And then he doesn't really need to have Maven, because if he wants to check how it runs, then he will just execute the wrapper command. And it's very nice, because when you want to run it on the cloud or in CI/CD tools, then basically you have no dependency to Maven version, and also the JMeter binary is kind of downloaded on the fly for you. And together with really the ease of use and configuration, and this feature of having per environment user property files, it's really easy to get started with CI/CD. And that's basically what I wanted to show you. I hope you enjoy it. We are basically going to extend that, so treat it as a prerequisite for running stuff on Jenkins, for running stuff on cloud, Azure, Amazon, and then in the next video I will show you how to do it. So please make sure that you actually go through that yourselves. If you want to connect with me, then you can visit my LinkedIn profile, and you can also fork that repository from this location that I'm showing you here. So thanks again. I hope you enjoy it. Have a good day ahead.